Well, welcome to today's show. It should be a good one, but it's going to be fairly short, and we're going to save a lot of time by going back in time. We're going to go back in time. Felt like I almost wanted to channel some Huey Lewis, I guess it was, but we're not going to do it. Anyway, what we've got is a controller now that we want to control our little fan, or little boxer fan that we had robbed out from the road when it stopped before. We replaced it. We had it laid around the house, and we got the bright idea to cut 4-inch holes in the wall, 4.5 inch, put our ductwork in for dryers, and mount a fan so that we could pull some air through when in fact we got high humidity in there. And we've got another little thermostat in there for another purge. We'll talk about that when we get done. But the controller, let's start with the controller for this little setup. Well, like I say, if you want to see how we built this little controller in this 4 11/16 kind of Steel City box, we just needed something big enough in it to enclose a 30 amp Omron relay, because I don't really need 30 amps, but I need more than 10. So I put a nice big relay in there so that we could switch off our 1500 watt heater and not have trouble, because our Elitech device can switch according to its information. We're assuming it can do 10 amps per output, since you can't do both outputs at the same time. So we put this one in on the heat side, and we were perfectly happy and satisfied using the 10 amp built-in relay in the Elitech controller that we have right now. The difference was, if we did that and we shorter had a surge or something, we would ruin our controller, and it's probably just cheaper to put a relay in there. We had already put a 10 amp fuse on that one side, so we were kind of taking care of it, but there's probably a better way to do it. So in this episode, we take that 10 amp fuse and run it to protect the entire controller, and on the outputs, run both outputs through relays. The dehumidifying or humidifying output, we put it on a 10 amp relay that we fit in the box, and we left our 30 amp that we have. In fact, let's go up to that upper screen and we'll take a look at something. All right, there we are. This is a 3-dimension view of that special, fairly expensive for what you get for it, because it's just a single pole double throw relay. As you see, I needed some room more than what I had to get a 2-pole double throw. Didn't have that room, didn't have it, didn't want to redo everything, but I did have the room for this little single pole version. The problem is you pay more money when you buy a single pole relay. And as you can see, if I could rotate, I can't control it all that well. Been a while since I did it in the CAD or whatever. There we are. Omron. So we have a normally closed, a normally open, and a common in between there, and a coil. It's not that hard to understand. Now, if I referred back to that video where I showed you actually how I use a string relief and cut the wires and put everything on there, put a longer cord, a 12 gauge cord, SO cord, SJ cord, I think it's probably SJ, with a right angle plug on it. We got all that set up, and we matched it up with a 20 amp duplex receptacle, break out the common on it, and we got that going. So all of that was fine just where it was. We just needed to change some parameter. And if we go back up to our upper screen, we see what we have up here. Up here is my little mouse moving around. Yes, these are 2 screenshots from just a while ago, and what we see is the current values are 75.9 at the time, 78.4 relative humidity. We see the on, what our on parameters are here, the off parameters here. So it comes on, the heater comes on at 43 degrees Fahrenheit, goes off at 45 degrees Fahrenheit. We have 95% relative humidity. When our well house gets at 95, it's going to turn the fan on, and once it gets to 90% relative humidity, it's going to turn itself off. We can see at the time that the unit was on, we have these other things down here that we're not going to really get into. But when you pull your app up, you'll select the device. If you only have one, this will only be the one you have. This is an STC1000 Wi-Fi TH, which means temperature and humidity. So that pops up. When you hit this parameter, you get this pop-up. It defaults on sensor parameters, but you'll click the middle tab and bring it up and scroll all the way to the bottom, and you can change the mode. All right, what you see here is on the humidity, it can either be direct acting or reverse acting, humidity or dehumidity mode, right? We have it now set on dehumidity, as you see there, and we have heat. We can either be cool or we can be heat, and it just affects what side your offset is going to be on. You're going to pick your, let me see if I show it up here. Yes, here we have humidity set value. All right, so we're going to do 90 because we're doing dehumidity. We're going to kick off with this differential. So we have 5% plus the 90. We go over here, we see we have 90 is turning off and 95 is where we turn it on. So that just makes it so it can either do either function you want it to. All right, let's look at the newer version of the wiring diagram. I'm not going to go over everything. I already kind of had it playing in the background earlier in the show, but we've just updated what we had going on. This is the updated version of this wiring diagram. We have most of our notes remaining. So what we did was we changed a little bit of how we were going to operate it. We added, this is that little relay that I'm on. There's your part number I use, right? Because I'm in America, we have 110 voltage. We added a note that this is in fact 12 gauge and only 20 amp as built. That's fine. These are also 20 amp as built, although they still show 15s. We added this right in here showing dehumidifying and humidifying, just like we had cool mode or hot mode. Added this note. We added in text instead of my handwritten scribble because I needed that space where that note was to say you got to break out that tab to make these two receptacles independent one of each other, right? So colors are still here. We're still down on the bottom. We said heat or cool, humidity or dehumidifying. Right, there we go. This is our 30 amp relay, I believe it is. This is our single pole that I just showed you that 3D on, and it works the same way. This guy does his regular job just like he normally would. If you like this content, please go to calldeltosell.com, find the tab that says on YouTube, click it, and it'll open up a page of QR codes. There you can use a smartphone to scan and get to the YouTube page, or you can just mouse over and click it on a PC. There you'll be able to subscribe to this little button over here and click the notification bell. Their job just like he normally would, but now that we have it set to be a dehumidifier, it's going to turn an output on and it's going to run that little fan, same way we do the heat, either which way. Now, I'll show you a little bit of a video that we're going to talk about where I show you what that thing is doing on the wall, why it's there. Well, we have it hooked up and we just tested it to verify it works, and it works beautifully. All right, let me explain this to you now that we got the whole thing done. Well, down there you see our heater with our thermostat that's gone out. We have it set so it's just on all the time. What controls its temperature, of course, is this little gray box, which is driven by the Elitech humidity and temperature guy. So it's doing its little thing. We have this line right here which goes up, comes around, and it just goes through that thermostat up top. That guy right there. And that's an attic thermostat. You get for 20 bucks or so on Amazon. All we did was leave that at 50. We'll probably move it up to 60 or so come wintertime. And what that does is it keeps that fan, regardless of whether or not the Elitech controller, the humidity and heater controller, comes on, it will lock it out if it's colder in here than whatever temperature I set it for. I could set it for 70 degrees, it'd be just fine. 80, 90, whatever we want to do. This controller is the one we can set by the Wi-Fi internet. And of course we've seen how we put the relays in the box, and the pipe is laying where it shouldn't be because we were going to put that intake on the back wall before we put it on the side wall. All right. I hope that made sense. We're using that 50 degree, 60 degree, 70 degree. I don't really necessarily need it to be too low. I can just have it set for the hotter days of the year and it'll be just fine. Now, one of the other things that we did was we moved this fuse that we had already drilled and painted, put it in the box and everything. What we did with this was we allowed the power from the 12 gauge to go directly into and go to the relay, which is way we wanted it for the 30 amp for the heater. And we also let it go directly into the receptacle for the humidifier, dehumidifier. And it really didn't need this relay. But what it allowed me to do is to take that fuse and repurpose that fuse's location that you see right there from being on the output of the humidity only. I actually made it in line with the power that feeds the controller itself. So it's protecting this controller where we're breaker protecting, short circuit and overload protecting with the breaker in the building by itself. Does that make sense? Just a slight modification. If you want to chase down the circuitry, if you can't tell it looking at it or freeze framing it, go back to the show from 2022, actually released in 13, so that'd be 2023, and you can see the rest of that. But yeah, now we got her up and running, and we can, of course, take our handy dandy telephone when it's all chilly outside, it's cold. I can get my paranoia fixed by pulling it up and seeing that we are both not flowing air through there in the wintertime, and that our discrete thermostat that interrupts the fan for freeze protection, that's working. All right, that's it. Do what you can when you can. Have a good time this year. Stay warm. This is early in the winter, I think, when I'll release this. We appreciate you watching. We'll see you next time.